Bhaktim Haro Bhagavati Pravahan Ajashram Ananda Bashpakalaya Muhur Ardyamanaha Viklidyamana Hridaya Pulakchitango Natmanam Asmarat Asaviti Muktalingha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Because of his transcendental bliss, incessant tears flowed from his eyes, his heart melted, and there was shivering and standing of the hairs all over his body. Thus transformed in a trance of devotional service, Dhruva Maharaj completely forgot his bodily existence, and thus he immediately became liberated from material bondage. Purport. Due to constant engagement in devotional service, hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping the deity, etc., as prescribed in 9 varieties, there are different symptoms which appear in the body of a devotee. These bodily transformations, which indicate that the devotee is already liberated within himself, are called Ashta Satvika Vikaraha. When a devotee completely forgets his bodily existence, he should be understood to be liberated. He is no longer encaged in the body. The example is given that when a coconut becomes completely dry, the coconut pulp within the coconut shell separates from the bondage of the shell and the outer covering. By moving the dry coconut, one can hear that the pulp within is no longer attached to the shell or to the covering. Similarly, when one is fully absorbed in devotional service, he is completely disconnected from the two material coverings, the subtle and gross bodies. Dhruva Maharaja actually attained this stage of life by constantly discharging devotional service. He has already been described as a Mahabhagavata, for unless one becomes a Mahabhagavata or a first class pure devotee, these symptoms are not visible. Lord Chaitanya exhibited all these symptoms. Thakura Haridasa also exhibited them, and there are many pure devotees who manifested such bodily symptoms. They are not to be imitated, but when one is actually advanced, these symptoms are exhibited. At that time, it is to be understood that a devotee is materially free. Of course, from the beginning of devotional service, the path of liberation immediately opens. Just as the coconut taken from the tree immediately begins to dry, it simply takes some time for the shell and the pulp to. An important word in this verse is Mukta Lingaha. Mukta means liberated and Linga means the subtle body. When a man dies, he quits the gross body, but the subtle body of mind, intelligence, and ego carries him to a new body. While existing in the present body, the same subtle body carries him from one stage of life to another. For example, from childhood to boyhood by mental development. The mental condition of a baby is different from that of a boy. The mental condition of a boy is different from that of a young man, and the mental condition of a young man is different from that of an old man. So, at death, the process of changing bodies takes place due to the subtle body. The mind, intelligence, and ego carry the soul from one gross body to another. This is called transmigration of the soul. But there is another stage when one becomes liberated even from a subtle body. At that time, the living entity is competent and fully transferred to the transcendent or spiritual world. The description of the bodily symptoms of Shidduva Maharaja makes it apparent that he became perfectly fit to be transferred to the spiritual world. One can experience the distinction between the subtle and gross bodies even daily in a dream. One's gross body is lying on the bed, while the subtle body carries the soul, the living entity, to another atmosphere. But because the gross body has to be continued, the subtle body comes back and settles in the present gross body. Therefore, one has to become free from the subtle body also. This freedom is known as Muktalinga. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Bhaktim Harau Bhagavati Pravanadashvam Ananda Bashpa Kalaya Muhu Ardyamana Viklidyamana Hridaya Pulakchidango Natmanam Asmarat Ashta. Because of his transcendental bliss, incessant tears flowed from his eyes. His heart melted, and there was shivering and standing of hairs all over his body. Thus transformed in a trance of devotional service, Dhruva Maharaja completely forgot his bodily existence, and thus he immediately became liberated from material bondage. It's a pleasure to be in the Sangha of Devotees. I'm happy to share that I'm right now in Sri Mayapur Dham. We had our international education conference till yesterday, and tomorrow we have a wonderful Abhishek of our Panchatattva deities. Some of the devotees to call me in. Sorry for this nag. This current context that we are in is where Dhruva Maharaj is now going to be airlifted. He is going to wind up his worldly activities. He has been given a special benediction by so many people, beginning from his mother, his spiritual master Narada Muni, the Supreme Lord, then Swayambhuva Manu came and met him, and Kuvera met him, and finally he is going to be received by the agents of the Supreme Lord coming in a Vimana and going to take him. So what did Dhruva Maharaj do something special that he got this privilege pretty often, pretty soon? Right from the beginning, Dhruva Maharaj exhibited a very deep as well as intense eagerness to see the Supreme Lord. Seeing the Supreme so pure from Dhruva Maharaj's perspective, but the intensity was so much so that he eventually met Spiritual Master. So the challenge that he faced in his life, how he handled the challenge, and how throughout the journey in his spiritual experience, he took advantage of various personalities in his life so that now he is going to go back home, back to Godhead. We all can very easily map our own lifestyle, spiritual journey, and we can draw some lessons from Dhruva Maharaj entering the spiritual abode. So the context is after Kubera bestowed his benediction, what Dhruva Maharaj asked for, which was blessing him to be attached to the Supreme Lord without any obstacle. So Dhruva Maharaj was very choosy. He was clear after all the Manu as well as Narada Muni. He didn't want to waste any more time in this material world. So he begged to have unflinching faith in and remembrance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he was very thoughtful. So after he was bestowed, he left to Badrik Ashrama, leaving his kingdom to responsible people and eventually started to work towards his samadhi. Reflections to turn what Srila Prabhupada has enlightened us here. So we are going to have three sets of reflections to elaborate or to understand this particular purport and this current context. In our spiritual journey, we are also facing different challenges, either material challenges or spiritual challenges, but we do face challenges every second day. A difference between a devotee and a person who is not serious in Krishna consciousness is how do we perceive these challenges and how do we translate them in our favor. Every time when we are practicing Krishna consciousness, we always expect ourselves to be working in our comfort zone. This comfort zone is so comfortable for us that in the name of Krishna consciousness, we are actually having some sort of gratification. I wouldn't call sense gratification to the fullest extent, but some sort of gratification which is looking like devotion but not exactly a pure devotion. So the first reflection is difference between availing opportunity versus creating opportunity. Many of us are devotees not because of our endeavors. Means we have not come into Krishna consciousness because we were craving for Krishna, or we were looking after Krishna, or we want to see God, or we want to go back to God, as in the case of Guru Maharaj. Most of us, or at least for sure, if I can talk about myself, I'm in Krishna consciousness because somebody was kind enough to me. So, technically speaking, that we are in Krishna consciousness by somebody's mercy, grace. So that mercy that we have been bestowed with, or like chatasukiti or costless mercy, because analyzing our own personal qualification, we won't qualify to be part of this wonderful Sankirtan movement. But still we are part of it. Still we are in the Dham. Still we are glorifying Krishna in spite of all our oceans. Realizing that how do I create opportunity for me to move forward in Krishna consciousness? Because Krishna gives, but he will continue and extend his support proportionate to the reciprocation that we all have. So if I am showing some symptoms or characters that I am interested in you, my dear Lord, then Krishna expedites. So we can see two categories of devotees. One category of a devotee is the one who constantly waits or blames that he was not given an opportunity to serve. Another category of the devotee are the ones who translates the opportunity in his favor to serve. Category A may take little extra time, wherein he is still thinking that some magic will happen for him or her to be somebody else have to work. But in reality, it is us who need to work. Krishna will definitely extend his support only proportionate to how much we are ready to extend our support. God helps those who help themselves. So, as a part of this reflection, we have 3 points. Number one, how much are we ready to help ourselves? What do we mean by helping ourselves actually mean? It means we allow ourselves to be trained, we are allowing ourselves to be engaged, we are allowing ourselves to be participating in the service of the Lord outside of our comfort zone. The point number two is we try to participate in those comfort zones in a very enthusiastic and committed manner so that small turbulences does not hamper us. Point number three is about how do we translate the so-called challenge in our favor. So I'll tell you a very interesting story. There was a washerman and he had a donkey in typical old India where People used to, washermen used to use donkey as the loads of clothes. So this washerman had been engaging his donkey for a long time, and after a point in time, the donkey became pretty old. After a point in time, this donkey could not carry the load that washerman used to put on his back. So a moment came where the donkey literally became useless. I mean, it cannot practically carry anything. Just that because the donkey was with the washerman for a long time, the washerman had his own soft corner to not let the donkey go. But at the same time, it was costing him, so he was thinking how to maintain this donkey. So he was kind of in a dilemma. So one day, the village that he was in, dry well, the well which was not, you know, giving any water, it became so dry, it was practically useless for the villagemen. So this donkey of this washerman one day fell inside the well and started to scream like anything. So it kept on screaming that it became a nuisance for the people. So they all came and they were looking at this. Both the well was useless as well as the donkey. So the washerman and the villagers together had a meeting and decided that since the donkey is also useless and the well is also useless, let us once for all put in our effort to close this well. We will all join hands together. We will dig some, collect some stones and sand and materials and close this well once for all. The washerman said, that's okay. Bring the donkey out of the well is also going to cost me, and maintaining the donkey is also costing me. So he decided that, okay, let's go ahead and close this well with the donkey live and eventually bury the donkey in the rain and once for all get rid of the problem. So they all joined hands and collected dirt, collected stones, collected stuff and started to throw inside the well so that the well can be closed. So as and when they were putting stones and sand and dirt inside the well, it was falling on the donkey, it was hurting the donkey extremely bad. I mean, the donkey was already screaming because of falling inside the dry well. But after it was throwing stones and dirt on him, it was feeling more and more pain. But the, the village men kept on ignoring the scream of the donkey and they kept on doing their job. The donkey was outside the well. So when they realized how this could have happened, every time when the stone and the sand fell on donkey, the donkey shook his body and let the dirt and stones and sand settle in, and the donkey stood on top of it. It kept on doing it. So what eventually happened was the depth of the well kept on reducing to an extent at a point in time the donkey could come out of the well by himself. So all through the while, the pain, the challenges, the torture that the donkey was receiving, somehow the donkey developed a sense of courage and responsibility that transformed those pains to his favor, and eventually it came out of it. We have a similar story which we discussed few sessions before. The story of a crockery, the story of a cup and a saucer. Person went to buy a very beautiful crockery, and it's a hypothetical scenario which was nicely explained, where the crockery started to speak the person who is buying it. My dear gentlemen, do you know how I became beautiful and useful for you? Let me tell you my story. I was actually dirt. I didn't have an identity. I didn't have any sense. I didn't have any importance in anybody's life. One day, one pot maker, he gathered me and he put me through various treatments. He initially poured water on me, he tapped on me, he rotated me, he dipped me inside paints and different sorts of stuff. He put me to the hot temperature. He did so many things in the process, and every time I was feeling so much of pain. Finally, when he gave the shape and beauty to me, I realized that I was useless dirt. Now I got somewhat useful just because of allowing my man to work on me. So these two stories, in the current context that we are in, is relevant because Dhruva Maharaj is one example who utilized the opportunity as well as capitalized on the opportunity that he got in his favor in a very positive frame of mind and dovetailed it back in such a way that he became a very good example. When Krishna gave his benediction to Dhruva Maharaj, when the Supreme Lord appeared in front of Dhruva Maharaj, he bestowed with a very special blessing that he will continue to enjoy in the materialistic world without having effect of this materialistic activities affect him. And at the end of his life, he will eventually come back to Krishna. Even though Dhruva Maharaj repented, cried, and wept, that it was stupidity of him to be demanding the Supreme Lord for something which is very cheap and material, successful, happy, materialistic life. So, Srila Prabhupada explains here in the purport that due to constant engagement, Prabhupada uses the word constant more than once. He says that by continuously, without disconnection, without any disturbance, when somebody is engaged in Krishna consciousness, translating the challenges, pains, or even sometimes the benefits in his favor to go closer to Krishna, they are considered as first class men. Mahabhagavata, or a person who has reached the stage of self realization beyond gross and subtle body, not become a Mahabhagavata so easily or so. It's not a very uh, cheap subject. It is something very deep and intense, and behind that there is a character that is shown. And the character is how are we availing the opportunity that comes our way, and to an extent, how are we creating an opportunity that comes our way, or that we need to create an opportunity that's on our way. So, both ways, by availing opportunity as well as creating opportunity to come closer to Krishna, is called a first class person. Srila Prabhupada writes in Teachings of Lord Kapila in one of the purports. He said that my business was going on very nicely and everything was smooth, but and I was clueless what is going on. But very soon I saw myself executing the orders of my spiritual master, and I then realized that Krishna is trying to engage me in the right path by introducing me something that is out of the comfort zone. So every acharya, they have demonstrated in their life what it means to be superlative nature in Krishna consciousness, which is to dovetail and to dedicate oneself to the unflinching, incessantly focused Krishna consciousness. Avichinna, Avyavahita, and Ahaituki. The name is, as Prabhupada explained in third canto of Srimad Bhagavatham. Avichinna means without reason. Avyavahita means without cessation. When somebody performs devotional service, then eventually they will reach a stage called Mahabhagavata. So as a part of our first reflection, I would like to share and encourage each and every one of us as practitioners. We should learn to avail the opportunity or identify the opportunity that Krishna is giving, as well as we should create an opportunity to go closer to Krishna. And don't wait or don't blame that nobody helps, because God helps those who help themselves. So as a part of this, we spoke on 3 points. One is, how do we learn to come out of our comfort zone, and how do we show our eagerness in all the small or big turbulences in our life, and how do we convert the challenge in our mind that Dhruva Maharaj is exhibiting some emotions. We need to understand emotions are of 4 categories. Emotions out of bodily attachment, emotions out of mental speculation, emotions out of intelligence, illuminated by knowledge, and emotions beyond knowledge. Emotions out of bodily attachment is very obvious that we all are attached to our assets, families, our so many things. Anything happens to them, we are so much attached that we lose our cool or we lose our self, and that emotion is simply rejected. Because every bodily emotions and attachments are going to cause pain. We have this Chitraketu's example. That's a very wonderful set of purports that Srila Prabhupada gives and explaining about Raja Chitraketu's attachment towards his son. So bodily attachment and bodily emotions, we may have symptoms as described here. But that which is arising out of body or bodily attachment is to be rejected. So we, as practicing devotees, we may also have symptomatic experiences in our own spiritual life. When we stand in front of, we may feel like not eating, or we would have fasted. We may feel like not talking to anybody and just simply chant the holy name of the Lord. We would have done that. We would have not wanted to do anything to do with materialistic world and just go to harm. But please note, the underlying reason behind it is what? If it is to escape from a materialistic problem, if it is to run away from a challenge that is there in your life, then there is bodily attachment. There are people, because of their problems with their husbands, wives, children, family, boss, body, health, wealth, so many reasons, you would want to renounce, we would want to run away, and we have our own emotions. So bodily emotions have to be rejected. There are emotions out of mental speculation, and these mental speculations are, very, very dangerous, because sometimes if the mind is not with knowledge, the mind makes you realize, believe that you are the boss, you are the beneficiary, you are the controller, you are the enjoyer, and because of that, we may have some emotions. Srila Prabhupada condemns this emotion pretty strongly, where when some devotees exhibited some superficial sahajya and some bhav, especially some devotees, they just get carried away by unscrupulous scholars and follow their ideologies and start to assume different bhava. They try to dress themselves like gopis, they try to, behave themselves and try to imitate, as Srila Prabhupada explained here. These emotions out of mental speculation is simply to be rejected, and it is very dangerous. So we need to be very careful. If our intelligence is near a bona fide source, then this mind will confuse us and try to drag us to a completely opposite direction. As we have discussed in the past, speculation means trying to hear from a relative source and not hear from an absolute source. The result of it is try to accept reality as illusion and illusion as reality. So emotions causing out of mental speculation should as well be rejected. Emotions caused out of intelligence with knowledge is somewhat can be acknowledged, because intelligence illuminated with knowledge is a representative of Paramatma. If Paramatma, Hare Krishna. So if Hare Krishna, am I audible? Yeah, yeah. So I was saying that if intelligence is illuminated by knowledge, if somebody um, gives importance to that intelligence, if the knowledge is from a bona fide source and emotions arising out of that is acknowledged and is appreciated. That is why it is explained that if somebody tries to give importance to the messages of Acharya, and they will be able to experience the result of them in their own life. Bhaktivinoda Thakur many times has explained this. In one of the songs he has explained, एक बार देख ले चक्षे जाल गौर बोले निताय देन सकल संभाल. एक बार देख ले चक्षे जाल, to get tears in the eyes of a practitioner out of devotion, illuminated by knowledge through some practices, is appreciated. So that emotion should not be compared to the emotion that Dhruva Maharaj is experiencing over here. Because Dhruva Maharaj, what he's experiencing is beyond mental, beyond intellectual, beyond subtle body. And that is the emotion arising out of his self-realization, identifying with the soul. And Srila Prabhupada explains that fantastically in Nectar of Devotion, chapter 14, paragraph number 1. I think we have read this many times. Srila Prabhupada explains that renunciation and knowledge helps a practitioner to elevate his consciousness to a particular level. Beyond that point in time, even the knowledge as well as the renunciation is not going to help. What's going to help is sincerity and a sentiment to please the Supreme Lord will decide his course of journey. So the second reflection that I want to talk about is, as practicing devotees, we may sometimes get confused with us. Oh my God, even I'm trying, or even I have goosebumps, or even I have some emotions towards the Supreme Lord. We need to check if this is out of bodily pain, because we cry out of bodily pain or external pain. We cry out of our mental speculation. And if our emotion whichever way, whether it's crying or hair standing on the end or it feels perspiring or whatever that may be the case. The Prabhupada wants us not to fall prey to all the somebody else. Once Jack Maharaj was giving a class in Vrindavan Dham. So when he was explaining, he mentioned a very important point about this speculative personalities. Because sometimes we interpret Krishna consciousness Siddhanta in a speculative way and start to assume that probably I have reached Gopi Bhava, I have reached that Bhava, this Bhava. And when there's a otherwise self-gratificatory distraction, we leave all those Bhava and go after them. So he was giving an example of a devotee who was like that, getting distracted, and after a few weeks, he couldn't, handle it, and eventually became mad, and finally was working in a petrol pump, even giving up Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada as well as all the acharyas are warning us of the recognition or identification to our emotions. As practicing devotees, we feel emotions, and these emotions are not wrong, but these emotions need to be real. Sometimes Maya, sometimes our own misconception may give rise to a feeling that we have made a progress. So, a person who is living by principles and having an honorable living will need to recognize from which corner of my consciousness these emotions are coming. So, the second reflection is about what Srila Prabhupada has written about the imitation as well as recognition of emotions. The emotions that Dhruva Maharaj is experiencing or that is revealing over here is genuinely out of what he has experienced, uh, what he gained throughout the journey from the time he left his house till he met Nargamuni, till he met Krishna, then Mahanu, and finally spiritual journey. We need to be very careful about handling our emotions. Definitely, the recommendation is that we need to learn to cry. We need to learn to weep and plead with Supreme Lord. But that is about our despondency rather than outcome. That is an input to the process, not as an outcome of the process. That is why we always use this um, acronym cry as consciously repenting and yearning for the mercy of the Lord. We need to consciously do that because sometimes we may get carried away by our own Maya. Third reflection is about the sense of renunciation that Dhruva Maharaj is exhibiting by slowly withdrawing himself from all the worldly activities. It is extremely important that as practicing devotees, especially those who are serious enough what Srila Prabhupada wanted, we need to have this agenda about renunciation in our daily life. The topic of renunciation is not the topic to be talked after 55, 60, 65, 70 years. The topic of renunciation is something that needs to be talked even from the age of 5. I think we have mentioned this many times in the past. As practicing devotees, we need to know that what we are doing, what we are acquiring, what we are enjoying, what we are dealing with, they are all part of Krishna's uh, paraphernalia, and they are supposed to be utilized in Krishna's service, and hence a sense of education should be inculcated right from a very young age that what I am acquiring, what I am bestowed with, supposed to be utilized for what I am even utilizing for Krishna's service in my own participation may be withdrawn from me for a higher purpose. So the third reflection is about the sense of renunciation needs to be inculcated. If the sense of renunciation is not inculcated, then at a time when things are taken away from us, we feel phenomenal amount of pain. And that time, because of our attachment towards that object or a person or a country or a process, we try to give up or dilute Krishna consciousness over the attachment. So hence, Dhruva Maharaj here very systematically, it is explained that Dhruva Maharaj ruled for 36,000 years. And when he want to wind up things enough in making sure that he does not any attachment left with. Srila Prabhupada writes about this in Bhagavad Gita in the context where he is explaining Arjuna how he need to fight. Then he is giving his own example, an example of King Janaka. He is telling to my dear Arjuna, that actually speaking, there was no requirement for me to do any of those things that I did. I am Supreme Lord. Nobody is going to question me. I still functioned my duties because it is extremely important for me to execute our duties. And then he is giving an example of King Janaka, the very next verse. He says, look at King Janaka. He also executed his duties, but he executed duties in such a detached manner that nothing with respect to his duties were handled, but at the same time, he never did this as an attachment of him. So he was completely detached while executing his duties. Hence, as practicing devotees, we need to learn to somehow or other inculcate this layer of renunciation along with acquisition. Anytime we acquire things, we need to also know that they will be taken away. At the end of the day, we will have many, many layers of our things, attachments are going to be peeled off, layer by layer by layer by layer. And the layer more you go inner and deeper, it is going to be painful. The better we learn to prepare ourselves to peel off those layers and let ourselves to be controlled by the Supreme Lord. That's what is education. Karma, jnana, bhakti. All of them can be perceived from a normal naked eye or normal person's view as something different from being in Karma Yoga is nothing but education as an information. The Jnana Yoga is one step above where it is education not only as an information but also as a reasoning. And Dhyana Yoga is not only information and reasoning, it is also about intuition, imagination, contemplation, meditation. But Bhakti is about learning to love and only love. So at a time when we are supposed to do devotion, that time neither reasoning, nor information, nor intuition, nor contemplation are going to come. It's only love that is going to overpower. That is why we need to be purifying even in our devotion, the Karma Mishra and Jnana Mishra. Jnana Karma ati anavritam anukulyena Krishnanu in our how we try to let ourselves put ourselves through the phase of learning as well as implementation, some sense of renunciation. That sense of renunciation will elevate ourselves from bodily, mentally, intellectually, and eventually situate us in the platform of soul. So, Srila Prabhupada explains in this particular purport, finally, the description of the bodily symptoms of Sri Dhruva Maharaj makes it apparent that he became perfectly fit to be transferred to the spiritual world And this fitness, this proper experience, one can experience the distinction between subtle and gross body in our own daily life. So somewhere or other, we should not get carried away by what looks like bhakti and just focus on devotion. It's about the personality called Tukaram Maharaj. Tukaram Maharaj has got a very similar ideal life, where in his entire life, even though he was a grihastha, he led a life of principle and complete attachment to the Supreme Lord Vittal. That eventually he got a blessing which is very unique, similar to that of Dhruva Maharaj, to be airlifted by Krishna in his Garuda Vahana. So it is not something to be imitated. At the same time, it is not something impossible. Dhruva Maharaj may have done this in Satya Yuga, but Tukaram Maharaj has done this in Kali Yuga. So this process of Harinam Sankirtan that we are involved in, the Sankirtan movement that we are part of, is not some ordinary process that is what Dhruva Maharaj achieved by performing tapasya in the forest, what various other personalities achieved in the previous yugas. Tukaram Maharaj demonstrated that just by performing Hari Nam Sankirtan, we can go back home, back to God. And with the privilege that he went back home, back to God in the same body that he was in. He did not have to die or go through some pain or anything of that sort. This process of Krishna consciousness is so sublime. So let us try to work towards it and take advantage of the situation and create opportunity to put us through that stage of purification. So before we end, I just want to summarize. We had three sets of reflections. The first set of reflection is about how we learn to avail the opportunity that comes your way, to be vigilant enough. That is an opportunity for me to recognize the Supreme Lord's mercy. And if we are eager and sincere, we need to create opportunity. Opportunity to somewhere or other connect to the Supreme Lord and go closer to Him against all the other pressures and forces of this material world. We have 3 points in connection to that. One is about how we come out of a comfort zone, do this. And number 2, how we learn to show our utmost eagerness and give away the small. How do we translate the challenges and accept those challenges as an opportunity for us to come out of the mess. The second reflection that we had is about emotion. We may be emotional, we may have emotional outbursts, we may even feel like crying or we would have cried. But then the emotions are of to be classified between body, mind, intelligence, and the soul level. Bodily emotions and mental emotions are supposed to be given up. The emotions arising from intelligence, illuminated with knowledge, is something that we can nurture to eventually give that up also. When gopis had their emotions, it was not out of knowledge, it was purely out of love. Krishna accepts the emotions out of intelligence, that's mind, as a process to purify ourselves, but those residual knowledge or attachment to our knowledge should also be given up at one point in time and just focus on sincerity and sentiment and dovetail ourselves to the Supreme Lord. So that's why we have to consciously repent. And the last reflection is about the renunciation and how we need to understand karma is just an education as an information. Jnana Yoga is an education as a reasoning and just information. Jnana is about education as an intuition, imagination, contemplation, and meditation. And Bhakti is about learning to love. And for us learning to love, we need to rise above jnana, karma, and somehow or other focus purely on Krishna's love. And for that, we need to start to inculcate the sense of renunciation from a very young age, from education perspective to contemplation perspective to understanding perspective to application perspective and to inspiring others. So there are different stages in which we need to take this renunciation agenda. So hence, it is not an agenda for 55, 60 years. Till that point in time, I will be taken up from a very young age. So that when we acquire, I know that it will be taken away. So that there is no sense of anguish or fear of losing. So Dhruva Maharaj definitely reached that position with the mercy of so many personalities in his life, and he led by his example of how to surrender and eventually elevate himself. And as we discussed, Tukaram Maharaj is one example in Kali Yuga. So we are all definitely fortunate enough to be part of the Sankirtan movement. As I always say, let us make Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam as our mission and work for it. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Is there any questions or comments we can discuss?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, very wonderful class. Totally captivating. Regarding, you read in the purport that ego intelligence and false ego intelligence and these three, they carry the soul to the next birth.
Yes.
Hare Krishna. But my
yes, I'm hearing.
Is the soul in whole world, are they being carried by these three? And if so, ego, which is false ego, which is more of a vice, why should that be included in carrying the soul to the next birth?
Basically, the point is for the soul to function or the soul to present, it needs a body. Either it is supposed to be a spiritual body. And whenever body is referred to, it is both Stula Sarira and Sukshma Sarira. Stula Sarira means gross body, Sukshma Sarira means subtle body. And in this material world, Stula Sarira is made of earth, water, fire, air, ether, and some senses, Karmendriyas, Jnanendriyas, and stuff like that. Sukshma Sarira of the subtle body is mind, intelligence, and ego. Prabhupada explains elsewhere that when we engage ourselves in the service of the Lord, both the gross body and subtle body, the soul elevates themselves from this material gross body and material subtle body and acquires a spiritual body. Soul is covered with this layer of gross and subtle body, but when the soul another spiritual body, because of which he will be able to get situated in a spiritual abode. So at any point in time, the soul is surrounded by mind, intelligence, and ego. It will be either material mind, material intelligence, material ego, or spiritual mind, spiritual intelligence, and spiritual ego. Am I making sense?
Prabhu, that refers to those who are the devotees. What about the atheists?
Even the atheists are surrounded by ego. So subtle body is for everybody. The atheists also have mind, intelligence, ego. So long as the soul is entrapped in this material world, it has to be encapsulated by subtle body and gross body. Just that the soul remains pure, but it is surrounded by this body. So depends upon senses, intelligence, mind, and intelligence, whichever is the other. As Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, when intelligence illuminates the mind, then mind becomes subservient or best friend. When mind overpowers intelligence, the mind becomes our worst enemy. So for atheists, materialistic people, even for everybody, the soul by its constitutional position remains pure and clean. Just that the surrounding of the soul decides whether the soul is in material consciousness or spiritual consciousness. So if for the atheists, because of their conditioned life living, their soul is surrounded by uh, gross and subtle body, which is completely material, and every time when they leave the body, the subtle body moves along with the soul. And at the time, whenever they get purified, either by Ajnata Sukriti or by the process of devotion, then the soul gets rid of that material subtle body, so to speak. Is that clear?
Prabhu, why is false ego added into this? I have not been able to understand.
It is not.
Why
It is,
false
it
ego
is
has
not
been
false.
added into
It is not false ego that God added. It is ego. Ego, in the spiritual sense, is about our identity. When in the spiritual sense, what is called spiritual mind, spiritual intelligence, spiritual ego? Spiritual ego is to identify ourselves as servant of the Supreme Lord. That is our real identity. When that spiritual, unfortunately, the context of ego in the materialistic world is in the wrong sense. So we always consider the ego in the spiritual context also as a wrong. The real ego, the true ego, as Prabhupada states, is about claiming and identifying ourselves as servant of Krishna. So if somebody says go, I mean, I don't know how much ever you have to, talk on this. The real sense, if somebody is situated that I am servant of Krishna, and that true ego is allowed to be in. And in that state of mind, somebody is not identifying himself with body or anything to do with external. So from the true ego sense, ego is not wrong. But when the true ego gets adulterated with materialistic consciousness, that's when it starts to think, I am the enjoyer, I am the doer, I am the center of my life. So Srila Prabhupada always uses the word false ego. So the opposite of false ego is true ego, which is that I am spirit soul and I am servant of Krishna. So that is part of our spiritual subtle body. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhu. Now, yes. And does it mean that the soul doesn't move at all? They are the carrier, mind, intelligence.
Well, this is not about the physical movement. It is about transmigration. So basically, the movement is not what we think in the materialistic physical movement of stuff. It is about transmigration and the evolution of consciousness. Definitely, when the body is changing, the soul moves from one location, physical location, to another physical location. But whenever we talk about movement of the soul, it is about transmigration from one body to another body. That body would be gross body to gross material body to gross subtle body to another gross body, or the soul, because of devotional life, gets purified and eventually enters the spiritual abode and leaving aside the gross material body and entering the purified absolute spiritual body. Is that clear, or maybe I'm not?
Yes, very
you.
clear. Very wonderful, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I just like to follow up on your answer just now. A couple of things. One is, like you said, transmigration transmigration of the soul does not refer to physical movement from one body to another in the material sense. It means that we go from identifying with one body to identifying with another body. And eventually, if we become liberated, then be eventually identified with our spiritual body. Is this correct understanding?
Yeah, in that sense, yes. But I also did mention that in the material context, whenever we talk about transmigration, even though the soul physically moved from one physical location to another physical location, it is not a physics phenomena. It is about a subtle phenomena. So whenever Srila Prabhupada talks about transmigration, he talks about moving from different consciousness level depends upon our action and reaction. So from that perspective, even though physical movement or soul, this life I'm in India, next life I might be in some hellish planet. So from that perspective, the geographical longitude and latitude, the soul is going to move to a different location. But then whenever we talk about transmigration of the soul, it talks about one consciousness level to another consciousness level of the subtle body and gross body surrounded. By position, soul is intact, pure. But the consciousness level of the subtle and gross body decides which body my soul is going to take, which gross body or a spiritual body my soul is going to take is decided.
Thank you.
Is that clear?
Yes, that's. I think that's clear. Thank you. And just one other question I have. I've never been totally clear about this concept of, the mind can either be our greatest enemy or our greatest friend. So just now you were saying that when the mind is controlled by the intelligence, I guess a Krishna conscious intelligence, then it can be our greatest friend. But when the mind, I guess, controls the intelligence, that's when it's our enemy. So when the mind is when the intelligence is in control of the mind, because in that scenario, how does the mind literally operate when it's controlled by the intelligence? Okay.
I will give an example of that. Mm-hmm. You are in Mayapur Dham on cold weather at 2:35, 2:43 a.m. You're supposed to get up for Mangalarti. Okay, so it's very cold outside. Tomorrow morning, in the morning, you're supposed to get up for Mangalarti and go for the morning program. So that time, let us analyze two parts how our whole functioning happens. Our senses are feeling cold. Our senses communicate to our mind and intelligence. Communication saying that, hey, I'm feeling cold. I'm not so feeling comfortable. So I'm feeling cozy inside my, blanket. So let me stay. So intelligence, if it is illuminated by knowledge, if it knows the importance of attending Mangalarti in a with the mind, because mind's function is thinking, willing, and feeling. So when the sense communicates to the mind says, yes, it is very nice, let us stay in the bed. If the intelligence is illuminated by knowledge, if you have heard previous night, if you have heard 3 days how importance of engaging ourselves in early morning sadhana, then the mind will tell the intelligence, no. What you're saying is wrong, so get up. So then the message is sent back to the senses. The senses uses our hands, give instruction to the hands, remove the blanket, you get out of the blanket and go and take bath. But if your intelligence is not illuminated by knowledge, what happens? The mind will convince you enough to think that anyway you're going to stay in Dham for the next 4 days, 5 days. Does not matter if you do not go for 1 day. You sleep, next day morning you can go. That time, because the intelligence is not illuminating for a momentary pleasure. So the first situation is when the intelligence forced the mind, where mind became our friend because intelligence illuminated by knowledge, overpowered and fought with our external senses, pain or pleasure, and let us operate out of the comfort zone, and eventually we got purified when we went to the Mangalarati. In the second case, the mind overpowered intelligence because intelligence was not illuminated by knowledge and continued to sleep and enjoy the so-called sensual pleasure and miss their rarest opportunity. So the challenge is every time mind and intelligence have this fight. In our own personal life, every time when you do a spiritual activity or when you miss a spiritual activity, to sit back and analyze, there will be a fight between two personalities, that is mind and intelligence. If you landed up in doing spiritual activity, if you analyze somewhere, you utilize your knowledge that you gained or preached to your mind. If you failed, your mind preached to you giving various logical reasons. So that's how it becomes friend as well as enemy.
So in either case, it is the mind that has control over the senses, right?
My senses, mind, intelligence, action. That's the sequence. Senses talks to the mind interacts with intelligence, and eventually the return instruction goes to the senses to do or not do. I have 100 rupees in my pocket. I see a cigarette packet. So there is a whole lot of it. So my senses observe things, process it, mind thinks, feels and desires, then talks to intelligence. That is why we say there are some people who are completely less intelligent because their intelligence is so dumb, it is so stupid that they don't even consult as soon as we see the object we enjoy. That's why we say animals operate mostly on instinct. Human beings operate on intellect. A male dog see a female dog, it does not discriminate. It is a mother, father, sister, daughter. It just enjoys. And in a human being sense, if you also don't discriminate, you are operating on instinct and you are animalistic. So the point is that every time sense talks to mind and mind and intelligence correspond. And depends upon who is stronger, instruction is given back to the senses. That is why karmendriyas, jnanendriyas. Bhagavad Gita talks about knowledge acquiring senses and there's another one that Prabhupada explained.
Wait, why did you just now mention karmendriya versus jnanendriya?
Because one acquires the knowledge and another is and let's operate through the senses.
Okay, so in the instance where there is knowledge, right? For example, we know the value of going to Mangalarati, yet we stay in the blanket, even despite knowing that knowledge. Then what has happened in that case?
Well, knowledge here refers to intensity of knowledge. It is like I know I am not supposed to smoke, but the knowledge of smoking is injurious to health. Even after knowing I smoke because of a counter conviction given by the mind saying that it is all right, this is only once you are going to do. Because the mind does not give a counter logic. Mind only gives a logic to say that if you do not go to Mangalarati today, that's all right. You have 3 more days. That's how mind and that association towards worldly minded things. So there is a constant tussle. So the point is that even after knowledge you possess, the intensity of knowledge, and number 2, consciousness. So long as we don't apply what we learned, we will always just once we start to apply, then we'll get the courage and intelligence will have enough energy. So knowledge having is not the point. The intensity of the knowledge that we possess, or the source of knowledge that we possess. Every thief who is stealing knows that stealing is wrong. In spite of that, he steals because that he is overpowered by his senses and mind. And every understands that it will be cozy under the blanket. But he says that seeing Krishna is all the more. Once he was walking in the sand of Kaveri river, under the hot sun, when his disciple was of king, barefoot in very hot sun, going after a prostitute, beautiful looking girl. So Ramanujacharya, the hot sun, I am not able to keep my foot down. How come this king, without experiencing any pain of this hot sun, is going after this beautiful girl? What is there after that girl? The king said that, my dear sir, I am forgetting all the pain in the beauty of the girl's beautiful eyes. Look at her eyes. She's so beautiful that the beauty of that eyes is overpowering, that the sensual pain not bothering me. That time Ramanujacharya told him, suppose if I show something superlatively beautiful, obviously give that up and get attached to that. And Ramanujacharya taking that king to the darshan of Lord Ranganath Swami in Srirangam. We call the Lord's beautiful eyes as Kundari Kaksha, the Lord with lotus eyes. So this king got so much captivated, the beauty of the never, so much overpowered by your mind, or sometimes mind can very well be overpowered. So the intensity of love, intensity of our application will help us, not just the information. That's why Isma is efficient. Bhakti is about love. So from information to reasoning, reasoning to contemplation, contemplation to execution. We are translate the information to action depends on our sincerity and seriousness. Am I making sense?
Yes, and that's it. How should I say, fortify absorbing so much information, and we're in a stronger position to apply how to do it.
Two things. Number one, do a constant test to yourself. People who are stronger. If I were with four of my friends in the room and three of them for getting up from Mangalarati, not with endeavor. That is what is called as Vaiti Sadhana Bhakti. Why of the surroundings. Krishna conscious, but all intended with 2 years. And simple test, as I always say, how much your taste in chanting as propensity towards others, get three things. There are three simple tests. And we are having envious towards one devotee over so many sitting in our hearts. And if attachment towards self-gratificatory things, then we have to keep reminding ourselves and choose to be with some intense association put us through. That is why Bhakti, Nam Vas, Vigraha Seva, Bhagavatham Smarana, association devote them. Just to whip this mind, tame him, and actually control.
This is yeah. This is that week, so many wonderful devotees on this Sangha, yourself included. So I feel like between the devotees on this Bhakti Sangha group and and the ones I experience on Sundays. I'm extremely association, yet the association doesn't seem to be this, you know.
Basically, the point is that sadhana is in spiritual quotients are in place, but in progress, some serious illegal the entire ecosystem about the self. Even if this is not properly dovetailed, or maybe have to experience and snuggle about. This much my salary has increased. Sometimes, when a devotee, we may appreciate our own self, but we need to know whether are coming from our mind, body, and analyze them because it's our need to make progress. When we hear and reflect and introspect, it becomes possible that my sadhana is okay, my panchanga bhakti is okay. Still, I'm not like there is something, some information somewhere is missing. I think we may have to personally.
Oh no, I'm is not saying that Asian sadhana not okay.